Ready? Okay. So good morning, everyone. We'll begin with the reflections on universal well-being. May our abiding well-being in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings release from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts there will be the heirs. So good morning, everyone. Today begins day 3 of our second 3-month retreat here at Redwood Vihara in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. And how about reflecting on the theme of this second 3-month retreat? And after some conversation, Rongjing Weisher and myself, and also with some of the senior teachers, we thought it would be on the theme renunciation, or letting go. Or maybe you could say joy in simplicity. A value that's, I think, not underappreciated in our society. I remember when my brother came to visit me at the 7,000 Buddhas when I was a layman. He looked at my room. It's kind of, it was concrete walls are kind of gray. Pretty cold. There weren't too many nice things around. He looked at me and said, "Why are you punishing yourself?" I said, "Well, Darren, I think I quite see it that way." But I think that's often can be the perspective on life in the monastery from the world outside, and they see the monk's life as very bitter. Yesterday and then this morning we're just sitting out on the porch, and maybe it's a little bit chilly, and there's no digital devices. No one's got any computers or cell phones. Everything's silent. And we're just sitting there looking out into the forest with very, very little. And I'm just sitting there, and you can hear the sounds of nature, maybe some animal running in the distance, or the wind blowing through the trees, or the birds flapping back and forth. And the silence is almost palpable. And in my heart I'm thinking, wow, this is wonderful. And then my second thought was, I gotta be careful because I can attach to this for sure. But there was this really kind of deep joy, a kind of, wow, this is so peaceful and so pleasant just to be here, sitting here, almost feeling like, a little bit like being one with nature. I don't have to do anything and just be here and just be part of this natural world. And it's very simple. All I'm doing is just sitting there, not making a noise. You can say I'm in good company. Jin Chuan Shi is sitting next to me with 3 of the laymen here. It's very, very simple. When a layman afterwards said, I want to stay here afterwards. Do you think I could stay? I said, nah. We did ask Dharma Master already. I think probably not. So I had the same thought. It'd be really nice just to stay here and just meditate and enjoy the peace and stillness. And you can say there's this kind of joy in renunciation about letting go that we sometimes forget, because in the world we're caught up in trying to accumulate to get more. And usually we think that happiness comes from satisfying our desire, getting what we want. Maybe it's a better house or a new car or a kind of relationship. But I think over time, if we start to explore and reflect, we realize that desire ultimately does not satisfy. Maybe there's a short-term gratification, but pretty quickly that kind of excited kind of upper starts to go away, and we're left with this kind of state, kind of blah state that we try to then find another thing to stimulate us, to bring us back up. And this endless chasing, going up and down, and we don't know there's actually a deep, abiding place of happiness and peace in just the balance, the mind quiet and stable. So one of the things that we reflected on together in our opening for our retreat was, what is something that you let go of that that after some reflection you found joy and happiness? And in the circle I shared about video games and how I let go of video games. So I will spare the story again for the men, and I'll tell a different story. And this story is, you could say, relationships. I remember as a young boy, maybe 12, 13, wanting to find my purpose in life. What am I supposed to do with this life? And then puberty hit, and then, of course, the opposite gender became very interesting. And, a lot of energy goes for young men, teenagers, in kind of figure out, how do you relate to the opposite gender? I think in current times it's maybe perhaps different now because of the gender fluidity. So maybe it's now opposite gender and your own gender. And also, what is my gender? So you have more things to reflect on. But at least for me at that time, it was, opposite gender. So
You can send a message.
yeah. So I remember, just that energy goes out into trying to find satisfaction in relationships. And when you come with that energy, it's very exciting, but also very, you could say, anxiety. You have a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of, and then, and the way you look at the world becomes very collapsed, because I don't really see people for who they are. I see people through my desire or through my wish to look a certain way. I begin to see myself in that way as well. So I remember, maybe 15, 16, and, trying to be an attractive guy in some ways. And I remember starting to learn the Dharma or starting to meditate. And still my mindset was kind of like that. a little bit. Oh, I can kind of, practice a little bit, but then I can relate to other people in a more kind of meaningful way. And over time, I realized, wow, you know what? I don't need to keep fueling this need to be attractive, to constantly be in this game of trying to attract the opposite gender, or kind of comparing this person with that person. And it's just like, gosh, that's a lot of work. And remember this story which I've told about how I was reading a book on a woman who went to a Catholic monastery, and she went with her friend. And she said she went with her friend to talk with this monk. She said this was the first time when she was with another man with her friend that the man paid equal attention to both of them. And she said this is because her friend was so much more attractive than she was. And all her experiences with men, they'd always pay more attention to her friend. And I remember just reading that and just being really struck by that, because it's like, because I could see that in myself. The first thing you often do is you look and you kind of compare attractiveness, and then the mind goes out kind of, I'm going to maybe pay a little bit more attention here because I maybe like this a little bit more. And you go, well, I don't want to do that. I want to respect everyone for who they are and not relate to them through my desire. And I think this is the case with everything, if you want to put it that way. You don't want to relate to people that way. We don't relate to cars in that way. We don't relate to food in that way. We want to relate to things as they are, not through our desire. And maybe you say, what was the freedom that came from that? I should say it's quite considerable, because a lot of anxiety just falls away when we think, you know what? I don't have to play the game of being attractive, and I don't have to go and compare people and see who's more attractive than the other. I can just treat people respectfully for who they are, and I can treat myself in the same way. I can accept myself the way I am, not needing to kind of show up in a kind of special way in the world. And what I found, there's a lot more open space in the mind and in the heart to explore. All that energy that goes into seeking the opposite gender could actually go and be used to explore the nature. So in college, I found I was very fortunate that I could use almost all of my time out of the classroom pretty much, practicing, exploring this realm. And now, being in the monastery, it's, you could say, kind of like being in Disneyland. You get to explore this all the time with good friends. So I think this reflection on letting go, on renunciation, in the world, we don't hear it too much, because most of the time in the world we're being kind of marketed to, right? People study all our preferences and then send ads constantly to try to hook us. And it's always playing to our desire for sensual pleasure, our desire for identity, for trying to become somebody in a certain way that we attach to. Or maybe they market to a desire to want to just numb everything out, just to kind of get away from it all. And the world's really good at marketing to these desires. But I think what the Buddha offers us is to say, if you really want to be happy, you really want to be free, there's another way. and it's actually letting go of desire. And you could say, if you let go of desire, you don't know what you'll discover. Something that is more precious than just getting what we want. Okay, so maybe just that much for this morning. And we'll do 3 steps, 1 bow. I was going to read something from Bhikkhu Bodhi, but